This video is ostensibly about EVE Echoes and NetEase, but we're also going to be talking a bit about Hearthstone and World of Warcraft, which, incidentally, if those are games you're in play, I've been covering on the channel recently. You should totally go take a look. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about the licensing between CCP, the creators of EVE Online, and NetEase Games, the people who are making EVE Echoes. And yeah, I know it sounds a bit of a jump and a stretch to be talking about those two different IPs together, but it'll all make sense, I promise. Anyway, folks, ahoy there, I'm Captain Benzie, and if you do enjoy this video, please take that moment to hit a like on it. Otherwise, let's jump right in. So earlier this week, I was in a Sheaved's Discord, and I do recommend actually checking out Sheaved's content. There's a lot of really cool stuff there. Someone was asking the question, does anybody know what the ownership situation is between NetEase and the EVE Online owners? How much control does EO have in the direction of EVE Echoes? Seems there's a lot of dispute about the choices NetEase makes. Darth Vader points out they are like totally different devs, you can say. CCP or whatever that dev's company are don't control anything probably. Maybe Captain Benzie knows, hence I was tagged in. As I point out here, it is a complex situation, actually a really good topic for a video, and this is that video. So, first of all, let's talk about Blizzard, Activision Blizzard, and their recent goings-on with NetEase, because NetEase aren't just a game developer in the sense of, say, well, EA's a publisher, but you know, you get what I'm trying to say here. They're not just a game developer, they do a lot of other stuff as well. They publish in other countries. And currently, NetEase Games, or up until recently rather, NetEase Games also published World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, Overwatch, Heroes of the Storm, StarCraft, and Diablo in China. It's one of those complex situations where if you want your game to be in other markets, sometimes you do have to like go through publishers in those areas as well. Korea is another one that quite often has people who publish games there from Western audiences, and we do actually have this in the West as well. If you think of studios like Atlas, for example, Atlas publishes a lot of Japanese RPGs, translates them and then reappropriates them for the Western market. And that's what was going on with most of Activision Blizzard's games. Essentially, NetEase were the ones that were going to be, were publishing this. It's running on NetEase infrastructure in China, and they're the ones who maintain all of that. Obviously, Activision Blizzard are the ones who still develop the game. They make the game. It's the World of Warcraft team that make everything that's going on. The Hearthstone team makes what's going on, but it's NetEase that then sends that out to the wider world. Now, recently, there have been some really quite interesting developments, and this video, which I will put a link to in the description down below, has a brilliant breakdown on exactly what's going on here. I do strongly recommend checking this out. Big thank you to Otto Mechanic for pointing this video out to me as well when we were talking about this the other day, where we talk about, these two talk about essentially what's going on, because World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, all of those Battle.net stuff have shut down in China due to licensing disputes. But the key point that's worth noting, and I can't remember if they mention it in the video or not, is that Diablo Immortal is actually still running in China. You can still play Diablo Immortal, but curiously enough, you can't play Diablo 3. You can't play Hearthstone, you can't play World of Warcraft, you can only play Diablo Immortal. Because Diablo Immortal is actually made by NetEase, it's not just published by them. And this, in a kind of roundabout way, brings me back to EVE Online and EVE Echoes, because we have a similar situation with EVE Online and EVE Online and NetEase, in that CCP Games and NetEase Games are certified to publish EVE Online in China. So basically, CCP are the people who develop EVE Online. They're the ones who create the game, they balance it, they design the new ships, that kind of thing. NetEase are now publishing this in China, and have been since 2020, basically. Which is really cool, because it means that we now have access to Chinese players. They can join up the server and, play with people. It's a great way to make sure that a game like this gets extended and loads of other people can be a part of it. And China is a huge market, right? Whether or not you want to go down the whole Chinese racist thing, and honestly, in my comment section, I'd really rather you didn't. But whatever your opinions of China are, you have to understand they are an absolutely massive market for video games, especially MMOs. They have a very large dedicated player base, and so it's natural that these MMOs want to work with Chinese companies as well in order to publish there. And so, just like Activision Blizzard, CCP Games are working with NetEase Games to publish EVE Online in China. Now, obviously, we also know that NetEase Games are the actual creators. They are the developers of Eve Echoes. And it's worth spending just a brief moment to talk about those two differences. What is a developer and what is a publisher? A developer, so when NetEase are a developer, what they are doing is they are actually creating the game, they are working on the code, they are designing things, choosing what goes into the game, how they balance it, so on and so forth. Publisher, on the other hand, is where someone else makes the game and you just distribute it into whatever markets you are ahead of. Obviously, distributor is another phrase we can use in this situation. There are some probable subtle differences as to whether or not NetEase in this sense are an actual publisher or if they're just a distributor. That's beyond the scope of this video, alright? I'm just using the term publisher because it's easier to work with. Anyway, so we have a situation where EVE Online is being published and distributed by NetEase Games, and also EVE Echoes is being developed by NetEase Games. The key difference there is that NetEase have overall say as to what happens in EVE Echoes, what systems they're going to add, how they're going to balance ships, that kind of thing. Whereas EVE Online, they don't get that kind of say. If the developers at CCP decide that they want to nerf a load of stuff or add a load of new stuff, then NetEase ultimately don't get a say in that. They're not the ones working on it. They are just then pushing that forward to their community. So why are these two things important, and why am I talking about this? Because, well, in short, I get asked this question a lot. How does the licensing situation in EVE Echoes actually work with CCP and NetEase? And the short answer is we don't actually know. Now, we know that Diablo Immortal, for example, it is published by NetEase, it's developed by NetEase, which means they ultimately own the rights to that full creative work, which means they can kind of do whatever they want with it. Even if Blizzard decided that, no, we think it's scummy what they've done, which, I'm going to be honest, I don't think Blizzard do. Blizzard are probably sitting there going, yeah, you kind of went a bit far and it's drawn a lot of attention. But ultimately, I think Blizzard are still just like, yeah, money, because they're a company and that's what companies do. Never forget, even your favorite games are run by a board of directors who don't give a crap about video games. They just care about what the company is producing in terms of raw fiscal value. Anyway, so yeah, I think we've got a situation where NetEase are still going to be pushing Diablo Immortal, they're still going to be running and operating that, but they're no longer interested in running any of the other services by Blizzard. There is some really weird stuff went on there to do with green tea and destroying a massive statue at the Blizzard headquarters, but hey, let's not go into that one. The simple fact is, with Diablo Immortal, they have licensed the intellectual property. And we know that that's what they've done with EVE Echoes, of course. The actual EVE universe itself is created and owned by CCP Games. And if you open up EVE Echoes and you go into the credits and things like that, you will still see that there are license agreements with CCP. CCP still have their name on it, right? Because it is the CCP IP. That means NetEase do not own it. I honestly think that we are in a situation where NetEase are developing the game and CCP ultimately don't care. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. CCP have got their hands full currently working on EVE Online, they're working on Project M5, which is looking awesome, they're working on the new FPS set in the EVE universe with CCP London. There's a lot of stuff going on for them at the moment. I don't think that they have all that much interest in EVE Echoes. EVE Echoes, it's licensed in, I imagine, either a rolling IP franchise where they're paid a flat amount every so many years to keep using the franchise and the actual intellectual property, or it's done in the terms of royalties, at which point they probably don't care all that much as long as the bills are getting paid. The second thing to kind of consider here as well is that EVE Echoes, whether we like it or not, we are not the primary market. We in the West are not the primary market. If you open up EVE Echoes on the Chinese server, you will see that it is still thriving. There is a very large, aggressive player base there of players who are getting involved in everything. And when it comes down to it, I do honestly get the feeling through my interactions with NetEase over the years that basically the Western server is just kind of a tag-along. They are working with the Chinese market. They are developing for the Chinese market. Then we are just getting that rolled out to us as well. There's no difference between the Chinese server and the Western server other than some events and things like that, obviously based on different holidays that either side doesn't celebrate. For example, obviously Chinese New Year's is still mentioned on the the Eve Echo server on our side, but there's going to be a lot more Chinese holidays related, whereas we get a few more. And I think that's honestly why some of those events do seem pretty lackluster for us, because they're mainly focusing on the Chinese side. I don't really care about Easter. It's not really a Chinese holiday, you know? So what does this mean going forward? Because people keep asking me, can CCP turn around and revoke the license from NetEase? Now, the short answer on this is probably. The long answer is, well, we'll get to that. Probably in the sense that I imagine that when they sold the IP, there are certain stipulations about what you do with that intellectual property. I used to work for Games Workshop. Games Workshop are very good at working with other companies to promote their IP, whether that's making the Space Marine movie or the Space Marine game or Fire Warrior or the Dawn of War series. Or more recently, you know, other games like Vermintide and the other one, I can't remember its name, that's just come out that's similar to Vermintide but 40k based. This kind of stuff, they are made by other companies, licensed by Games Workshop. And I know from my time working with the company that GW are very hot on this. They don't just kind of sell the intellectual property rights and then off you go, do your thing. They are heavily involved, they are integrated into that. You have someone basically from Games Workshop head office who's overseeing it and double checking that the lore all makes sense, that the units make sense. I'm still not entirely sure how Fire Warrior came to be, in the sense that, you know, the Tau weapons are crap compared to the Imperial weapons that you pick up, which seems really backwards for that kind of game. But hey, let's not get into that. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, Games Workshop are very protective of their IP. They work very closely with the teams that they license that intellectual property to. I don't think CCP is working as closely with NetEase. I think there used to be some advisors and that going on in the early days, but I think it's kind of become very much hands-off. And admittedly, the Eve Echo's Twitter account have recently tweeted out some things, so the Eve Online Twitter account has recently tweeted out some stuff to do with Eve Echo, so it's clear that there's sort of a minor sort of, oh yeah, we've got that as well, please go play it. Which brings me to believe that they do want the game to kind of keep going. I just don't think it's a primary focus for them. So I said the short answer is can they revoke the license is probably, because there are probably clauses in the licensing agreement that means that CCP can turn around and say, we don't like what you're doing, we're going to take the license away from you. I imagine they will never do that. It's the kind of thing they would rather just let the license expire and then say, well, look, we're not going to renew it because we're not interested in this anymore. At the same token, though, I don't see that happening. The long answer to this is that, yeah, they probably can revoke the license if they really want to. I just don't think they ever really will want to, because, simply put, Eve Echoes makes a lot of money, and even the Chinese market, that money will go to CCP in one shape, way, form, or other. And that's kind of my point here. That I think that we as the Western market in Eve Echoes, we are not the primary focus. We are never really going to get our voice heard. So if we want that experience, you kind of need to move across to Eve Online. And I will be doing some content for that, almost like I've planned all of this, right? But I don't think we're going to see the Eve Echoes license revoked anytime soon. I think the game will just kind of keep going. I think the Western server will eventually die because we have a very different idea of what we want that server to be compared to what that server is going to be. We want the EVE Online style game where your decisions matter, where every ship has a place, where there's content widely available for everyone, full-on sandbox experience. It's clear that the Chinese market doesn't. They're quite happy going with that bigger is better and push everyone into capitals and this kind of thing. So I don't think we're ever going to see those changes, and that really hurts to say. And I don't think that CCP will ever revoke the license. I don't think CCP are looking over their shoulder at NetEase and going, oh, this doesn't fit our plan, this doesn't fit what we wanted EVE Echoes to be, this isn't our original vision of the game, it's gone too far from EVE Online, and it's a bit oversimplified, and you're really pushing in the wrong direction. They're not going to do that. They're just not going to do that. And whether you agree with that or disagree, I think it doesn't really matter. I think that is just how it is going to be at the end of the day. The license is going to remain with NetEase until the game either dies or NetEase seriously step on CCP's toes, or, yeah, I don't know, because like we've just seen with Hearthstone and World of Warcraft, the fact that Blizzard has basically not chosen to renew those means that every single player in China, all those people who have spent years building up a collection on World of Warcraft, building up a collection in Hearthstone, I cried all night. Millions of Chinese lose access to World of Warcraft and other hit games, and honestly, that's heartbreaking. That is absolutely heartbreaking, and I'm also well aware that that picture is not at all to do with World of Warcraft, that's League of Legends, I think, but that's heartbreaking. Imagine spending decades building up characters that you love and have a history with, building a collection of cards in Hearthstone only for your government, well, not even your government, for the publisher to basically turn around and just have this war with the developer. There's a lot more to it, and I'm not saying which side I'm on. I don't think I'm on a side at all in it, if I'm being completely frank. But basically, it as the suspension follows a bitter dispute between Blizzard, a unit of Activision Blizzard, and NetEase. That dispute has basically shut down all of those games, and it's in a situation now where where Diablo Immortal is still going because that is under a separate agreement. I can't imagine that CCP are going to rock the boat and try and do that, because then they'd lose all of their players in China as well for EVE Online, and that's going to be a lot of money lost there. So I don't know. The bottom line, I don't think we are ever going to see the license taken back from NetEase. I don't think CCP are all that bothered by it. We just have to kind of strap in and hope that NetEase decide that actually they want to broaden out the game and do more with it. Or the alternative, as I said, love it or hate it, is to move to EVE Online. And I will be making more EVE Online content to help soothe that transition for anyone who does want to make the move. I've got some videos out already, but yeah, it's not a great situation, to be completely frank. It is not a great situation, but it is what it is. Anyway, folks, I have been rambling on for long enough about this now. Hopefully I've covered the points I wanted to cover. Hopefully that all makes some kind of sense to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help me out. Thank you for watching, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.